Folks, She Said, a film about the New York Times investigative reporters who brought the Harvey Weinstein story to light and brought the man to justice eventually, has released. Let's talk about it. So, first thing I want to just mention is that it struck me as very interesting while watching the film that we are living through this history. Usually when you watch a film about historical events, like a film like this, me personally, at least I should speak from my experience, I don't feel as personally impacted by the story. Obviously, I understand the significance of these events, and it can still absolutely affect me, but I found that I was particularly touched by a film that explores something that I actually remember, that I was actually around for and experienced. Because even like in All the President's Men, I've seen this film compared to, because obvious subject matter similarities, investigative journalists bringing something to light, and All the President's Men doesn't seem familiar to me at all. I'm obviously aware of the story. I find the story very intriguing. I like the movie, but I wasn't around for the Nixon, for Watergate, for anything. I didn't know Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. That's embarrassing. I didn't know who they were. I knew who they were before the movie, but not that much, before I saw the film or became aware of it. And so to actually see a film about something that is so recent, it just felt very interesting. And I guess I'm going to be experiencing that a lot more as time goes on, because they're going to keep making historical films, quote unquote, about the time periods that we live in now. And it's just an interesting experience. As far as the actual film goes, I will say that I was rather touched again by just the subject matter in general. It's a horrible, it's like everybody knows the story. Harvey Weinstein, abusive producer who used his power and influence to completely ruin some people's careers and ruin some people's lives in the way that he abused, sexually mistreated, straight up raped women. And it's a horrible story, and one that I think absolutely should be told. Obviously everybody knows it now, but to immortalize it in the medium of film, and to tell it from the perspective of the victims and the reporters who broke the story, I think is a very powerful and necessary tool. So as far as the subject matter goes, I think it was always going to be just something that feels important and necessary. But I do think the film benefits in the way the story is told. It's not trying to be anything exceptional. A lot of the shots are just reverse shot, take in place in ordinary environments. Nothing special about the cinematography or anything like that. But it's a very to the point film. Straightforward, doesn't waste any time. It tells you what you need to know, and that's about it. And so a lot of the film is just victims being interviewed, or people related to the situation being interviewed by the reporters. And it gets a little repetitive, but there's nothing manipulative about this film. And I hate to do this again, because I know a lot of people like this film, but I was a little negative on a film that came out earlier this year, Till, about Emmett Till. And obviously that's also an important story that needs to be told, that should be immortalized in the medium of film. But I found it to be a very manipulative film, one that was really trying to force the viewer to feel certain ways at certain times, through the use of music, through the use of certain imagery just displayed at different times, through the inclusion of certain scenes. There's long monologues, drawn out scenes of mothers crying and stuff like that. And again, obviously all this stuff happened, but it does matter how you tell the story. And so I much more resonated with She Said, and I think a large part of that is the fact that it just gave you the facts, it gave it to you how it was. There's nothing here that you have to necessarily decide for yourself. It's very clear and to the point and straightforward. It's not trying to be anything special again, but it is a film that just treats you as somebody who understands this, who knows the situation, and it's just giving to you the true perspective of these victims. One thing I will, praise about the filmmaking in general, would be the editing. I actually rather like the editing. I saw some people criticize it, but there's a technique they use a lot, in which obviously because again, most of the film is interviews, and so to sort of break up the monotony of just endless interviews, they tend to cut flashbacks just splice them in between scenes of interviews that I thought worked a little well. Is it a little jarring? I didn't think so. I guess some people had that perspective, but I appreciated just the inclusion of things to make it feel more intriguing in an otherwise, just very plain scenario. I'll talk, you talk, I'll talk, you talk. To put something in there that breaks that up, I thought was very helpful. One complaint I would have, and again, I haven't seen anybody say this necessarily, but I did find specifically when it came to the people being interviewed in the story, not all of them, I don't mean to generalize, but a large bulk of the people being interviewed, I felt the acting was very stiff at times, felt very inauthentic. And I think that made it a little bit harder to actually get invested in what they were saying. There's a few notable examples that come to mind, but there are just times where, and then I actually also noticed it, phenomenal actress, I've only seen her in this, but she was great, but Zoe Kazan as well, there were times where the acting just didn't feel super flowing. It felt very, very scripted. All in all though, don't have too much to complain about. She Said, pretty conventional. I'm actually very interested to see the impact this film has, if it will be something important a decade down the line, 20 years down the line, if it will be lauded as a film that is historically significant for telling this story in film, or if it will be forgotten, because obviously it didn't make a big splash at the box office. We'll see its Oscar impact, but I am doubtful at its Oscar prospects. But I'm just interested in general to see how the film performs with the public over time, and if it's more embraced or forgotten. So folks, few complaints here and there, but overall I did appreciate She Said and the story it was telling. It's going to be a B, high B, but a B nonetheless. And I do think that if you're going to tell a historical film, if you're going to give, it's a sort of a Wikipedia article that feels a little mean, but I find it to be true. It's just telling you the facts in a visual medium. It's like reading a Wikipedia article. It's still intriguing. It's still very fascinating to read, but it's nothing special, right? There's no added perspective in a Wikipedia article that gives you first-hand accounts. And so it really just feels like it's dictating things as they happened in She Said. And I, thought that was fine. Again, it's not one of my favorite films of the year. We'll see how historically significant it is for taking that approach. It's certainly not the first film to take an approach like that. We'll have to see how it plays out. Folks, if you saw She Said, let me know what you thought about it. I think it's unlikely that you saw it because, again, box office impact was very minimal. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. I do think that it's an interesting watch, even if you think you know the story. I think there is something to be gained by seeing it unfold in this way. And again, getting the perspective of the victims of the Weinstein scandal in general. So very glad that man is behind bars. Thank goodness. Truly horrific scumbag. Folks, I've been EDPC Reviews. You've just been the absolute best. Again, let me know what you thought down below. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.